Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to this video tutorial. What I want to do is basically talk you through my rapid prototyping process within Webflow. So what I'm going to do is just show you how I would take a concept. In this case, it's a concept for a dashboard that I've just put together in Balsamiq. It's not a completely thought out concept or a completely thought out product. The idea is just to create a couple of screens, so a kind of a dashboard screen and then a kind of a secondary page and a login, and then just show you my prototyping process of how I would get this into Webflow, get it down as a wireframe, and that's what we're going to look at in the first video. And then in the second video we're going to look at the how we could actually bring some interactivity if we wanted to build out and make it into an interactive prototype as well. And we're really just going to focus on things like the flows and communicating the concept as a kind of an initial prototype that we may show our client or stakeholders. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into Webflow. Right, so let's create a login page. Let's list out all our different pages first, just so we know where we are in terms of structure and hierarchy. So let's duplicate this, and we are going to have a dashboard page, freelancers, and company page. Dashboard. Freelancers. Companies, jobs, reports, and settings. So I mean, I'm thinking this is maybe I didn't explain it earlier, but this is kind of it's like a freelance platform. It's like you sign in, you find jobs, you connect with other freelancers, you connect with other companies, you pitch for jobs, you earn money. A little bit like something like Upwork or something like that. It's just a loose concept for a kind of a community of freelancers and a community of people that could work together. Okay, so companies, jobs, reports, and settings. Jobs, reports, and settings. We're not going to build out every single one of these pages. We're just going to focus on a couple. Okay, so let's grab a section. Sorry. Section. Let's just call this, because this is just how I approach things. I'm going to call it section wide, and that's like the widest part of the page. Then within that, I'm going to have a container that sits within that, and I'm going to call it section inner. And this is going to be like our central column, our central container on the website, and it's going to be everything that aligns it in the middle. Right, and let's bring a form into that. Okay, so let's bring our form into that, but first what we want to do is set the width. So we're going to say width 100%, which means that the container takes up the full width of its parent container, but then we want to set a max width on it because its parent container currently takes up the full width of the screen, and we don't want this central column to take up the full width of the screen. Let's say a max width of 1200 pixels. And what that basically means is that if the parent container is over 1200 pixels, this central container will sit nicely in the middle of the screen, and if it's less than, it will scale to the full width of the device, which is kind of how we want it to work. Right, let's call this login form. Again, we're just going to move through quickly. This is about prototyping stuff quickly, getting ideas out down on the page, and then being able to like present them to people and show them to people. But we also want this login form to not stretch this full width because it's quite long. So let's set that to 500 pixels, and let's also center align that. Right, we are going to login form but we want our login form to sit slap bang in the middle of the page. So we're actually going to use Flexbox, and we're going to set, we'll call this login form block. Right, I'll whack that in there. And the login form block, we want to set the width 100%, the height 100 VH, which is full height of the parent container. But then we want to bounce over and use Flexbox. So I'm going to use Flexbox, and we're going to say that the contents is horizontally and vertically aligned. So we're saying login form block, the contents horizontally and vertically aligned, which means that this sits nicely in the center of the page. So we've got a login form there. We've got a login form block, which we're applying the Flexbox properties to, which allow it to sit in the middle of the page. We've got that within a section inner, which is keeping everything nicely centered in the page, and then we've got it wrapped up in this section wide, and that might not be so obvious why we have a section wide here, but further down the line, what it allows you to do is manipulate the full kind of background of the page. So if you wanted to have like a full width and a full height background, but then within that you wanted content that was center aligned and not full width or full height, then it just gives you more options to kind of manipulate it. But we don't want to worry too much about that in a minute, because we just want to build out like a quick kind of prototype. So let's actually just get rid of that. Next thing we want to do is add a little bit of a header. So we just want to add like a top navigation strip, and we just want to add like a potential logo. So notice as well, because we're prototyping, we're not styling anything. We're just keeping everything default. We want to keep things in Arial because it's nice and boring, it's nice and plain, and the point is not to actually approach the design at the minute. It's just to think purely about content, layouts, content structure and hierarchy, you know, the user flows, and different things like that. And when we're presenting a prototype, we just want people to be able to use it and experience it and move through it and analyze it from that perspective, rather than focusing too much on how the design works. But what we do want to do is, because it's Webflow, because it's a form, this is the first page they land on, we want to redirect them to a particular page. So I'm actually going to just use a little hack here, and rather than having a form button, I'm just going to have a normal button, and we're going to call this, so let's just make this consistent with the wireframe. So we've got email, password, and then we can change our placeholder text. So it's just your name, it's a bit more succinct, your email. So let's say that these are required, because when we demo it to someone or when we test on it, we can actually get people to input their details, and it feels a bit more like the real product. Let's change the button text here to log in. Right, cool. Yeah, so sorry, going back to the button. So let's use this to redirect to our first page. So then that creates the impression that you land on the login screen, you enter your details, you click to login, and it takes you to our first page. So it would be something like this. Login. So let's make that required. Cool, and then let's redirect to the dashboard. So email rob@robertsmith.co, password, whatever, click login, and then it goes to our dashboard. So that's kind of emulating that user flow, which is quite nice. The other thing we want to do is add in a header here. So let's call this I want that to be in the middle as well. Let's call this login block header. Don't know what's going on there. Header. Let's call this login Right. Let's add a little kind of margin to that. Oh, not that much. Something like that. Maybe that's too much. Login. Cool. Okay. You know what as well? Let's give this a little bit of interest. So let's make this grey. And then what we're going to do is break this out on a box. So we're going to have a login form. We're going to give that a nice white background. Then we're going to add a bit of padding. So we're going to say 40 pixels. Might be a bit too much. I think that's cool, but we've just got a bit too much there because this has got padding on it. There we go. So it's like our login box and our login screen for the first screen of the prototype. And we want to add in a header here. So let's grab a div and let's say header wide, right? Let's give that a background color as well. Okay, let's set that at width 100%. It's already like 100% anyway in a sense. Now let's give that an inner container so we can centralize the contents. Let's call this header inner, width 100%, max 1200 pixels. And again, because we want to centralize it, I'm going to use auto. Now that's disappeared because there's no contents. What it's automatically going to do is just fold up to nothing because the height of it expands to fill the contents. So because there is no contents, it goes to nothing. So just so we can see it, we're going to give it a height of 50 pixels. But actually what we want to do is, because of the nature of this dashboard, we don't really want this header center aligned. So we're actually just going to call this logo block. I'm going to say width 200 pixels, width 150. This is the placeholder for a logo. Okay. And again, this is the thing with wireframes. It's just, and prototypes, it's just all about blocks. It's thinking in terms of blocks. It's not going into too much detail. It's just, you know, bringing stuff together on the page. This goes here, this goes there. Cool, done. Let's move on to the next page. You know, just that very kind of quick, successive way of prototyping things and bringing things together. You know, think about the detail and everything like that at the kind of more refined UI stage. Header wide. So what we want is a bit of padding because we don't want this logo to sit right up against the header there. Okay, so let's start looking at the main dashboard page and bringing this into a wireframe. So we've got a sort of a heading of the page. We've got a header up the top. We've got some kind of figures that we've pulled out. These could be nicely animated or add some kind of visual interest to the page. And we've got a list of new jobs within the platform and new freelancers that have joined the platform as well. So let's look at how we can build that out. So this is an interesting kind of design challenge here. We want to kind of create this sidebar that sticks to the left of the page. We want to create this header as well. And then we want to also keep all of this stuff in the center of the page too. So let's have a think about how we could do that. I've done this before on a couple of projects. So we are going to grab our header wide. We're going to dump this into here. Let's also grab a section. This section wide. So this is the thing. It's about kind of creating reusable elements. You know, so your section wide is consistent. It's always got a grey background. It's always the full width of the page, and you know that you can build on that as like a canvas with the rest of your content. Section inner. So let's not worry about that for the minute. So we've got a section wide. What we also want to do is, what's going on there? I don't know why that's happening. Oh, I know why, because, alright, cool. Okay, so let's not worry about that for the minute. What we want to do is we want to figure out how we can build this nav bar on the left and then this content section on the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a container. We're going to fix it to the left. Then we're going to create a wider container, and then we're going to move the contents of that over to the right so it misses the sidebar on the left and brings it into the middle of the screen. And that probably didn't make much sense, but I'll show you what we're going to do. So section wide. So let's call this section left. Right. I'm going to call this next bit section right. Right. And we're going to say section left height 100%. Let's give it a fixed width, right? Because we want it to be fixed. So if we have like 200 pixels, let's give it a background. Can't see anything at the minute. In fact, let's give it an absolute height just so we can be sure of where it is. Okay. So section left, and let's fix that. So it's absolute, right? Now let's get section right, and okay, just so you can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna do section left is gonna be like a red color, right? Section right, let's make that blue. I'm just gonna give it a height of 500 pixels as well. Then what we want to happen is don't want that to be auto. We can fix that on the landing page. So you kind of see here we've got our header, we've got this sidebar, and we've got this section right. But then what we want to do is we want to have an inner section in this section right, so we can actually put some content in it. So we want to call that section inner right. And what we want to do then is we want to offset that by the width of this on the left. So this is 200 pixels, right? So let's get that, and let's bring a margin of, let's say, 240 pixels, right? There you go. Right. And if I set that to 100 VH, if I set that to 100%, it's going to go to there, and set that to 100% as well. I might have to tweak this in a bit because I don't know if these percentages are going to work properly. But do you see how this is coming together? So section left, let's turn that into something that's maybe a bit darker. And then section right, let's get rid of that. So you see, so now we have the makings of a dashboard. So column on the left, heading at the top, and content area on the right. Let's lighten this up a little bit. Again, when you're making prototypes, it's all going to be grayscale, but you want to think about the different levels of the content. So stuff that's at the background, you know, if you want to make that go to the background, yeah, it should be kind of lighter. It should be less heavy. If you want to bring stuff to the foreground, make it darker, make it more heavy, you know, and think about it. It's really, you know, it's 50 Shades of Grey, basically. Okay, so what we want to do now is just quickly build out our like a list. So we're going to call this sidebar nav list, right? No bullets. I'm going to call this sidebar list item. Okay, and we're going to add some. What we want to do is we want to make these like buttons, right? So let's add some link blocks in there. So that means the whole thing is going to be clickable. So we're going to say sidebar link block. I'll show you how that's going to work. Right. And then we want to add some text. So let's call this sidebar text link. And let's call this dashboard. So let's get all our content in, then we can style it up really easily in Webflow. So we want dashboard, freelancers, companies, and jobs. So 1, 2, 3. Dashboard, freelancers, companies. Dashboard, freelancers, companies. Jobs, reports, and settings. Settings. Cool. So let's give let's make this the full width. So we're kind of making these into big clickable blocks. So let's give that full width. Let's add some padding. We've got some padding between them all. Right. Then let's add like a border, like a divider, just to show that they're separate blocks. Let's make that a bit more subtle, something like that. And then let's get rid of, no, let's keep, I mean, this is a prototype, so let's keep these underlined. We want to show that they're links. But what it means is that we've now got sort of clickable buttons here. So if I click on each of those, I would go to the relevant page, which is pretty cool. Now what we might do, just to show that this is a selected state, is Webflow has a current link, which should allow me to say that the link of the page that I'm selected on appears differently. But I'm not seeing that. Oh, I think it's because I'm not, yeah, so I'm not actually linking up. So let's link these up. So we want to go freelancers. As I say, I'm not building out every page, but I'm just showing you how to rapidly create a simple prototype, you know, using this approach in Webflow. Freelancers, dashboard. So yeah, you see there it says current. So this then says that the current page, we're actually able to style it so that what's currently selected can appear a bit differently. So let's just say, let's have that appear a bit darker, and I think we could change the text color as well. Let's just leave that, you know. That's fine. It just shows us we're on that page. So there we go. If we click on that, well, we don't have the navigation on that page, but you'll see it if we did. Okay, cool. So we're getting there. So we've got our navigation made. Let's look at our top level navigation. So we just want to bring in this kind of, it's like a drop down. Normally on a dashboard you have a link in the top right that lets you access things like your account and your settings, and it's like a kind of a my profile link. So we can just add that in really easily. This is already floated, so we want to float this to the left, this logo, and then we just want to use like a simple drop down, like a select, but that actually has to be in a form, which is fine. So let's use this drop down. This one's pretty cool, right? So that's the standard kind of Webflow drop down. So let's call it profile drop down. And let's give it a bit of a border so it kind of stands off the white background. And let's call this, normally on a dashboard you kind of have like, you have the person's name if you're logged in, and then you'd maybe have a little picture of them, and then you could access different elements from that drop down. So let's give it my name, and let's float this to the right. Okay, and we've got our padding here so it doesn't sit right in the right. And let's just publish that. Okay, cool. And then we can, we can access other parts of the prototype using those potential links. So I don't know why this is red now. Oh, it's because it's gone red for some weird reason. So let's just add in a couple of other options there. So if we go to the drop down list and we show that, we can then actually choose the options here. So we could have my account, settings, and again, if you're building out the whole prototype, then you could link this up off to all the other individual parts of the dashboard and the prototype. You can do a lot with it, but just for the purposes of this video, we're just gonna we're not gonna actually link all that up today. So we've got this, we've got a sort of a page title, and then we've got this content here that we're gonna add in. So let's go to our section inner right, and what we want to do is add in a heading, and we're going to make this an H1 because it's the main heading of the page. So we're going to call this like dashboard H1. Let's make it 32. Let's call this overview as per the wireframe there. And let's add a bit of padding to this main kind of inner section. So this is section inner right, is this kind of centralized column that sits on the right hand side of the dashboard, on the navigation. And we're just going to add some padding in there. So let's add in about 20 pixels padding. And there's definitely going to be a few things that we need to kind of like tweak and just kind of smooth over with the prototype, and definitely with the responsive stuff we can look at that too. But we're just going to focus at kind of getting the content in and just kind of getting something together tangible for the minute. So we've got these three boxes which are kind of like call out boxes. They're sort of notifications telling the user how much they've earned, how many new jobs are within the platform, and how many new freelancers have joined the platform. So to do that, we're going to choose some columns. And we're going to call this 3 col row. Then we're going to choose how many columns we're going to have. So we're going to have 3. And then just so we can kind of apply some styling to the individual columns if we wanted to, something I always do, I kind of give them individual classes. So call 1, call 3, and we want to actually bring that in to that central container there. Okay, so let's call this info box. And this little thing here is going to be like an icon or some sort of image or some sort of illustration that just goes with the data. But again, it's a prototype, so we're just going to keep this, keep it simple, keep it blocky. Let's just give that a fixed width and a fixed height. So let's give our info box a background color. Let's make it something like that. Let's give this some padding so it's not also close to the edges. 20, 20, 20. I'm kind of just working in multiples of 20. Sometimes how I like to do things. There's no hard and fast rule around that. I like to keep things consistent and say, you know, let's work in multiples of 20 or 30 or whatever we think is best for the project. Okay, so there doesn't actually need to be a heading. So let's call this, let's get a text block. Let's call that info number large. Again, just thinking of things quickly, getting the content in. You know, it's a kind of an early stage prototype. You don't need to spend ages thinking about things. Let's make this a bit bigger though, give it a bit of impact. Make it bold as well. Let's make it bold. So what we want to do is, okay, so we've got that, and we want to give this a little bit of text as well. So let's call this info detail, right? And this month. Okay, so what we want to do now is bring this figure and this little piece of text kind of in line with the icon. So if we floated this to the left, we floated that to the left, and then we floated that to the left, it doesn't really work. So what we kind of want to do, I think, is put them in we want to put them in separate containers. I think that's the best way to do it. So let's call this info block left. Okay, I'm going to put the icon in there, and it's an info block left. It's 50 pixels, and we're going to keep the height standard. Sorry, auto. Let's call this info block right. So then this is going to be the the opposite container that we're going to float right. So let's add that into there. Or even, yeah, we're actually going to float it left. So info block left, let's float that left. Let's not float this, so that this now breaks out onto there. So that's not floated. This also isn't floated, but we want to float the wrapper to the left. Perfect. Now let's add some bit of margin to the bottom there. And then let's also add a bit of margin here. Cool. Okay, so that is, let's add a bit of line height there. Okay, cool. Maybe we can just, I don't know, could that be a little icon, like a circle or something? Yeah, let's make it like a little circle. Just so it's a bit more interesting. That's pretty much it. Yeah, cool. So we've got, so let's just copy and paste that, and then let's just change the content. Got a 57, new jobs, 18, new freelancers. And this central column is obviously really wide, and we're gonna sort this out shortly. So it's kind of stretching the whole width, but we can sort that out. So look, we've got our flow kind of set up. Login, Let's enter our details. Okay, password, something. Log in, bang, we're into our dashboard. We haven't got the other pages set up yet. Now let's work on these two columns here. So same thing again. Let's use a two column layout, and let's call this 2 call row. 2 columns. Let's drag this down. Let's just call this col left, col right. Again, don't necessarily have to give these classes, but it's like a habit. Just if we wanted to style one of these columns specifically, then we can do that. So let's call this new job block. Let's add a bit of padding as well for here. But also, yeah, so we don't, we might use 3 column row again. That's like a reusable element. So we don't want to necessarily add a margin to the bottom of that, because if we're using it elsewhere, it might affect that layout. So let's let's wrap that in something, and then let's refer to that thing that we've wrapped it in specifically. So let's call this info block wrapper. Okay, and we can add a margin to the bottom of that. And then for this, let's call it this new info block. Let's call it notification block. Cool. Right, new job block. Let's give this a background color, because again we want it to be like a kind of a block or a card that's sitting on the page. Let's also give this a bit of padding. Oh, and the other thing was in Webflow, by default the columns have they have their own kind of padding within them. So they have a padding of 10 pixels left and right, and what that means is you can kind of get this thing where it doesn't really match up with the border of the parent container. So what I often do is I whack a minus on there. So I say minus 10, and that kind of balances stuff out. Cool. Okay, so let's have a heading here, and let's have this as a heading 2, right? So let's say dashboard heading 2, or dashboard H2. And let's think about hierarchy. So maybe that could be a bit bigger. Maybe that's 48. And let's bring this down to something like 32. There's a bit more of a contrast in the hierarchy there. And we've got new jobs. Let's give this card some padding. Cool. Let's just take the margin off of that. And then we want to create these kind of list items. So we can do that pretty easily using the list element. Let's grab a list, and let's just call it new job list. List. Let's grab a list item. Let's call it new job item. Again, moving quickly, not thinking too much about stuff, just sort of getting the idea down and getting something tangible down. And again, we've got the same thing here. We want an image on the left, and then we want to float this text to the right. So let's do the same thing that we did above. let's call this new job left. Let's duplicate that. New job right. Let's see how this will work. Let's just put that in there. We can rename it. Let's call this new job icon. Maybe this could be like, if it was a job from a company, it could be a logo, or it could be an image, or you know, it could even just be a sort of a generic platform icon, depending on depending on the context. So what's this? Job left. Cool. Just get rid of that and call it new job icon. Okay, let's do 50-50 with that. So let's have a similar kind of grey. What do we want to do? And that's in new job left. So let's float that to the left. New job right. Let's add some text in. So let's call this new job title. Let's make it Arial, bold. Again, I think I said this earlier, but keep, you know, if you're making a prototype, keep your text simple. Don't worry about fancy fonts or anything like that. Just keep it simple, keep it readable, use Arial. It's a bit boring, but that's kind of the point. Right, so let's float this to the right. Cool. And then let's add a little margin on the left so it pushes that right container away. And then we want to add a little description. Let's grab some text and let's call this new job description. Lorem ipsum. Lovely stuff. Alright, cool. And then the other thing we want to do, so new job item. Let's get rid of these list items so we can just duplicate this one. Let's just add a margin to the, a divider to the bottom there so we know that it's something. And let's also, let's add a bit of padding margin there. And then let's push this away as well. So let's put a kind of a bottom margin on that. You see? And then if we wanted to, okay. Let's have 6. And then actually, so instead of doing that, let's add some padding. So the new job list item has padding 20 pixels at the bottom and the top. There you go. And what we could also do is maybe we could add like a divider to that, but it's probably not necessary. Okay, cool. So it's coming together. Right, and then we kind of just want to repeat the same thing here. So it's sort of making me think: do we need to kind of rename all these classes? Like what I'm trying to say is, do we need to have a block for new jobs and a block for new freelancers, or can we just use the same kind of classes for that and just be a bit more generic? And I think we can, and I think what we can do is we could say, look, we can use the rename function and we can say new job, new item block, right? It's more of a generic item block. Dashboard H2 is fine. Let's call this rename. Let's call this new item title. Right, so it's just a bit more generic in the way that we're referring to it. But it means that we don't have to we don't have to create another kind of element and give it a load of new classes or anything like that. New item description. New item icon, right? Because it's all the same thing, right? It's just new items on the home page. So let's grab this, let's put it in this column. Let's just change this title. Okay. And there we pretty much have it. This is kind of cool. Right, obviously again this is going off the edge of the page, we can sort that out. But as you can see, the prototype is coming together. Actually, what we also might want to do, and we're not going to go there just at the minute, but what we also might want to do is make this whole block clickable. So if we wanted to link through from this list to the actual item that we're talking about, then we could do that. Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we could say, if we actually had a page that had the job on it, then we could link to that. But we're not there just at the minute. Okay. And then maybe we don't want this to all be in blue because it's not like a primary link. So we want to just kind of change our text color a little bit there. But sorry, I'm going around in circles here. We need to give the link a class to be able to do that. Okay. Where are we? Item, let's call it item link. Okay, so it's got a class. That means every other class of item link will be styled this way. Oh, what is it? Okay, new job item. Okay, cool. New job list. Okay, I don't know what happened there. I thought I renamed that. New item list. And let's just call it new item, right? Spell it right. Okay, so new item 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Cool. New item block. Let's put it in there again. Change it. Let's just add in a name. Let's just say freelancer name, right? It's probably the long way of doing it, but fuck it. Oh, sorry. I'm not supposed to swear. Job title. Okay. Now it's always better to use, I'm setting a bad example here. It's always way better to use real content in a wireframe or a prototype, because then you're designing for the content you have. But I am just kind of using these generic names for the purpose of this prototype. Okay, so new jobs, new freelancers, and if we want, we can click, and then that would go to the actual single page if we had that set up. We don't have that at the minute, so that's basically the home page. So, or the dashboard rather. So we've got our overview, we've got our figures. These could be, some interesting figures that counted up when you first landed on the page. just to provide like a bit of visual interest, or we could have like some charts or graphs or something like that there. And we've just got a list of new jobs within the platform and new freelancers, and you could click on one of these and that would take you through to the specific page for that item that you clicked on. And we've also kind of got this drop down, and this is what I like about Webflow compared to like prototyping in static software, you know, like Sketch or something. There's a lot you can do with Sketch, but you know, to just get something like in the browser, you know, get it kind of responding and being able to interact with it and create these kind of actual interactions and link up screens, and it's just nothing really beats it for that. It does have its drawbacks. It's not like you can't, you know, whereas in Sketch you can design in a slightly more freehand way without thinking of the HTML output. You can do that, which is a bit more limited in Webflow, but you know, it's horses for courses, and it really depends on, you know, the project itself and what you're looking to kind of achieve and do. So let's build out this page real quick. So let's jump to the freelancers page. We have nothing there, but let's grab this, and we're just going to use exactly the same layout and setup. I'm going to grab our header, and we're going to put that on the freelancers page. I'm going to grab our section wide here, and again, it's just, you know, super simple, copy and paste, drop stuff in. I'm going to call this freelancers, and we're going to get rid of this bit and this bit. We're going to keep the same section inner, and then we're going to grab some Camtasia open there. Then we're going to grab some 3 columns. We're going to put them in here. What we're going to do is say 3 col row again. Change that so it's there. Col 1. As actually, I probably could have made my life easier by keeping the other one that was there, but too late now. Okay, so col 3. Then what we're going to do is grab a div, and we're going to call this, we're just going to call it freelancer card. Let's call this directory card, right? Because it could be a freelancer, it could be a business, it could be a project. Again, it's all to do with the kind of the site architecture and how we're going to sort of approach things and lay things out on the different classes and names that we're going to give to things. Something we'd probably consider in more detail if this was a real project, but you know, just for the purposes of this video, I'm kind of storming through it a bit. So let's get a little block here, and let's call this directory image. Let's give that 50 by 50. Now we want that to appear in the middle, so let's set a margin of auto. Let's give our card a little background. Let's make it white. Let's make the image grey. Turn that into a little circle using border radius, and again give this card some padding, so we've got a nice amount of padding on it. Maybe that could be a bit bigger, you know. Maybe let's do that 70 by 70. Okay, and let's call this directory title, directory description, cool. And then we're going to add these little buttons in as well. So let's add in profile button, and let's add another one. Let's call this connect button. Cool. All right, let's actually bring this stuff now into the card. Take these. Cool. So let's turn this into a title. So let's make it like that. Let's give it a name, just so we're consistent with what we've got. We're not going to give it a name. We're going to say freelancer title. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. Let's give it a name. David Smith. Right. That wants to be in the middle. That also wants to be in the middle. Right, let's add some margins and things like that. Here, maybe shorten this. Cool. 20 pixels again. And then what we want to do is we want these to appear. So if we that there, they're going to appear in the middle. I actually didn't need to do this. Actually, yeah, I did. What I should be able to do, I think, is yeah. So if you change, if something's an inline element, which is basically what this setting here does, an inline element will kind of adjust to the alignment settings of its container. So in this case, the alignment settings of the container are center. So this aligns to center as well. If I turn that to a block level element, it also does the same thing. Okay. Obviously, I don't know what I'm talking about. I do know what I'm talking about, but I know that it somehow like behaves differently. Webflow. Cool. View profile. Connect. Cool. All right. So let's just duplicate this now. And again, real simple. Just duplicate this 3-column row. But we want to add some padding again. So let's call this. Sorry, we want to add some margin at the bottom, but we don't necessarily want to add it to the 3-column row. So let's just try and think about breaking things up into different kind of containers and kind of separating things out with styling. So let's just call this directory block. Right. Let's just have 6. Sorry, 9. And then let's add. There we go. So that didn't take any time at all to make, and that's, you know, it's coming together, man. It's, you know, it's a nice prototype. I don't know why it's asking me to translate. I think it's because it's got lorem ipsum in it, which is fine. Okay, so this is fine, but what we're lacking a little bit here is some kind of alignment, and this whole grid system that I've got going on is not quite right. So what I think I want to do is give this section inner right a width of 100%, right? But then what I want to do is set a max width, and we can illustrate that if we give it a ridiculously small max width. So you see it constrains to 500 pixels. That's the maximum width that it could be. But we don't want to do that. We want to give it like 1200, right? And then there's a couple of ways that I could maybe do this. So I could think if I get rid of that and I set this to auto, that it kind of goes into the middle there. Oh, this Latin thing is really annoying. Never translate this site. Okay, but that doesn't really work then. I guess this is a broader question about the design. Do we want the center column to be always aligned in the middle of the screen, or do we want it to kind of be on the left and then it has like a max width? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to have it being on the left and then going as having like a max width. And again, this is a prototype. This isn't the final finished design. Like if this was the real site, maybe we have like a masonry kind of layout here. So this card here, it would kind of fly up and go onto the left of this card here. So you have like a sort of a Pinterest type board thing going on, but you can't really prototype that very easily in Webflow. But it's still, it gets the kind of the concept across, and maybe even Maybe 1200 is a bit short. Let's try that, right? Yeah, cool. So that's looking pretty good. What we're now going to do is look at how we can make it responsive and turn it into a responsive prototype that obviously responds across different screen sizes using the very kind of powerful way that Webflow allows you to build responsive designs. So let's just start. Let's start with the dashboard. Okay, so this is kind of our desktop view, and that's fine. But obviously when we view it on smaller devices, we want to make it respond properly. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hide this section left. And this is our kind of sidebar, and we're going to hide that, and we're going to bring that in just a moment when we look at a bit later on when we actually look at interactions, because what we're going to do is have a kind of a show and hide thing. So we're going to have like a hamburger menu up here, and then we can show that sidebar on the left when someone hits the hamburger menu. Okay, so we've got our section right, which we have also got a section inner on, and that's got a margin. So let's get rid of that margin, and let's add some padding to this, so it's not flush up against the the sides of the container. And then we've got this kind of 3-column layout, which is looking a little bit squished on tablet, on a kind of a tablet size screen. And we've got these 2 columns here as well. So I mean, I don't know, I think it depends on maybe the project and the prototype. But I mean, there's 2 ways we could do it. We could have these stack one on top of each other, which is really easy to do in Webflow. So you just kind of choose there that you want this to stack. And I think for this, I'm gonna have that stack one on top of each other like that. These, let's make this a little bit smaller so it doesn't break. Let's maybe bring that down to like 32 or something. Okay, and let's see how that's gonna look on a smaller screen size. Cool, so it's like that. There we go, perfect. And then it breaks again there, which is what we want. So that's cool. So that now breaks. So this is what I love about Webflow. Making responsive designs is so easy. Because of the way it kind of stacks up and just takes the existing page structure. So it's very easy just to make simple make simple tweaks and make like a really easy responsive experience. We might also change the line height here, just because it's on a single line. And that kind of keeps everything a bit more compact. And then what we've got here is we've got like quite a big margin. So let's get rid of that. Notification block, info block wrapper. So we've got, let's set that to 20 pixels. And then we also want to get the bottom margin off this last info box. So we're going to call this info box last. And again, if you haven't watched the other tutorials, I suggest you do, just to kind of understand how we got to this place. And a little bit like I said in those tutorials, the point of this is it's not really like a Webflow tutorial to show you like the exact best practices and best ways to do things in Webflow and understand CSS. It's more just the process of getting like a rough concept into Webflow and kind of just building out a very simple, quick prototype that can be used for feedback. And for prototyping purposes. So that's looking pretty good. So we've got our kind of cards at the top here, and things tend to break here, and I think this is because I've got this section as a 100 pixels. So we're going to change, 100 VH, which is the viewport height. So we're going to change that to auto. So it's going to fill to the width of whatever's in it at 20 pixels here. The other thing we might also do is just let's add a little bit of padding here. A section wide. Ah, that's not going to work. Don't worry about that. Okay, cool. Got that. So that's coming together. But yeah, the other thing I thought we might do is just get rid of this border on here, because it's there's nothing below it, so it doesn't necessarily need a divider. In a way, what's below it is the content. Sorry, it's the bottom of the box. So new item last. That's looking good. There you go. It's a bit cleaner. It's looking nice. Maybe this be a bit smaller on mobile. Overview. That's cool. And so there. So this is quite interesting. When we get to this kind of screen size, we want stuff to break and stack up on top of one another. So we're going to have it look like this. New freelancers. So what we're going to do is just make sure that this is no longer floated, and then that will also push those down as well. So we've got like a icon or an image for whatever it is on the job post, and then we've got, you know, the job title, the description. Cool. Okay, let's just have a look at how that's looking in the browser. I know you can also do it this way in Webflow. It's just kind of a habit I have of viewing stuff like this. So it gets to there. Okay, I might need to have a think about that. Goes to there, and then it stacks up rather nicely on kind of much smaller screen sizes as well. Let's just take a look at this page. The thing I was, when you get to this kind of screen size, it doesn't really work. So I'm going to have another look at that in a second. Let's just take a look at this page. So again, I think these are going to be quite cramped. If there's a lot of text or maybe long titles, I think squashing these cards up doesn't really work that well. Kind of goes like that. I don't know. I think that could work. Let's leave it like that. So again, it's just a kind of a concept and an idea. Let's add a bit of padding with these guys. Maybe we try this full width. Same with that one. So they kind of fill up properly. So we've got our cards like this. Then we're kind of getting to a smaller screen size. Our cards look something like that. Then at this screen size, they stack on top of one another. So what we want to do is add a margin bottom to the cards so that spaces them out. And then we want to take the margin off of the directory block, which is this stuff here. That's looking great. And then on smaller screen sizes, that also works perfectly as well. And we've got the dashboard H1, which is also on the dashboard H1 here. This has been inherited. So this Freelancer page inherits the styles obviously across the board, so that when we get to this smaller screen size, the sizes of this change as well. So let's take a look at that. It's looking good. Take a quick look at the login screen. Okay, so header wide. think that's broken the container because it's floated. We can change that if we have overflow auto. If you set auto, so if you float something within a container, it kind of moves it out the flow of the container. So if the container doesn't have a specific height set, then it defaults back to 0. But you can change that by setting overflow auto. I'm not actually sure of the specific reason for that, but it's just, I know that that's what works. Okay, cool. Login. Let's just make this a little bit smaller. So we've got this at 38, 32, a bit more proportion. Smaller screen size. Let's bring that down even more. Not a huge amount to do on this page. And then when we get to here, it's a section wide. Let's set some padding on it. I thought I already did that, but I did that on something else. Section inner right. Okay, so let's get rid of the padding on that. And instead, let's set the padding on section wide. Actually, no, I don't think that's going to work. Nope. Okay, let's go back to section right. The reason, the reason that isn't going to work is because it's going to push this sidebar out to the right as well. So let's just get rid of this. So we're inheriting that padding. That's great. Cool. So let's go back to the login screen. Okay, let's add some padding to this login form, so that when we get onto the smaller screen sizes, it doesn't sit flush to the right of the parent. And let's also take out some of this padding. Cool. Again, you know, it's quick, it's dirty, it's just building a very simple kind of prototype, like a rapid way of doing it, just to get something built and kind of show, to be able to show to people and communicate ideas. Cool. Right, let's go to here. This is linked up. So we can just look at our flow now. So that goes to freelancers. Then on the freelancers page, we have that. So our flow would be something like a user lands on the page. We're going to log in. Email rob@robertsmith.co. Password, whatever. Cool. Let's log in. Ah, nice. Got our dashboard. Cool. Let's check out the freelancer directory. Simple prototype, simple flow from signing in to going to find a freelancer. So the last thing that we're going to look at, just to give it a bit of interest, is a couple of interactions. So the first thing that I'm going to focus on is the responsive navigation. So we hid this kind of sidebar navigation in the responsive view. So we're going to look at a way to kind of bring that back and expose that as a kind of slide out type menu using a hamburger menu in the responsive view. So what I'm going to do is just create my hamburger link. So let's grab a div and let's call it hamburger block. Let's float it to the right. Okay, that's on the right. Cool. Let's just give it a width and a height. So we're gonna give it like 50 pixels by 50 pixels. Let's just make it look like that for the minute. And what we're going to do is just set up the interaction first, then we can just maybe look at the detail and the design of the actual hamburger block itself. So I think what we want to do is, rather than, okay, so this is where it gets interesting. So we've hidden section left. Maybe rather than doing that, what we want to do is we want to position it elsewhere. So let's just position it off the screen, right? So minus 200 pixels. So when it gets to there, it's still there, but it's off the screen. Okay, and let's just see if this works, you know, in practical terms. Cool. So it's still there, but it's just hidden, right? And what we're going to do is basically use this menu block, or this button trigger, to just trigger the navigation to slide in. So let's head over to interactions. I'm just going to use a legacy interaction for the minute, just to keep it simple. And we're just going to call this responsive navigation. We're going to just say our trigger is a click. So when we click on this particular thing, what we want to do is affect a different element. And the element that we want to affect is section left. So click, element that we want to affect is section left, right? And what we want to do is we want to say when that is clicked, we bring, we change the position of section left by 200 pixels. Now it doesn't really make sense on this view, but when we go down to this view, we see that it makes sense, right? So that should be fine. And then what we want to say is, so we want to add the next part to that. So we want to say on the second click, this moves back to its origin, which is going to move it back off the screen. So let's try that. That goes to there. Bang, bang. Very cool. Very cool. All right, that's pretty much the interaction. So let's just, I'm just going to show you how to build a nice little hamburger menu. It's like a way that I like to do it. So let's just grab a div, put it in this div, and let's just call it hamburger strip 1. Let's spell hamburger right. Right, let's set width 100% because it's going to be the width of that block. Set like a height of 2 pixels. Let's give it a background as well, right? So let's give it like that kind of background. Let's actually make this a little bit more. Let's make the width, let's make it a bit smaller, 40 by 40. Okay. I'm also just gonna add a bit of margin to that so it doesn't interfere with it. I'm also going to bring this block down. Okay, cool. So we've got our strip 1, which is like the first line. I'm going to take this and we're going to call it hamburger strip 2. Which is our second line. Set it width 100%, height 2 pixels. You know what? Let's go for 4 pixels. Let's give it a background color. We can copy that. Okay, let's give this one the same color. Let's give it a height of 4 pixels. Now let's add like 4 pixels between them. I'm just going to make the last strip hamburger strip 3. Same thing again, width 100%, just so it takes up that container. 4 pixels. Same background color. Okay, which I seem to have lost. Cool. And then what we're going to do is grab that strip. Cool. So we've got, if you like, we've got a hamburger block, which is like our container. Then within that, we've got 4 strips that kind of actually represent the design of the hamburger menu. And we're just going to move those down. And then we're going to get rid of this background. So we've got the strips in a container, but they're not actually, and it's the container that actually dictates the position of where it appears. Let's just maybe make that a little bit more, 35 pixels, a little bit shorter. Cool. So, and the last thing we want to do is hide this on desktop. So we'll hide that, and we say when we hit a responsive view, we want it to appear. There we go. So we've got desktop view. We get down to our responsive view, click our hamburger, we get our slide out navigation, and then we can keep going all the way down. Awesome. Cool. There we have it. Okay, so I hope that's been useful. What we've done, just as a quick recap, we've taken a kind of a wireframe concept for a dashboard for an online freelancer platform that I just very quickly put together. And I've just shown you how to quickly bring that into Webflow and just kind of talk to you a little bit about how I'd approach building it in Webflow, a little bit about how I approach prototyping in Webflow, and just to kind of give you a bit of an idea of what's possible and why it's a great tool to use. So I hope you enjoyed that. Again, if you've got any questions or comments, leave them in the feedback section below.